Hello everybody. If you want all the story's content in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 905, the last number on the dial. Upper intermediate. Agnes Cole knew the value of a good routine. Every Tuesday, at precisely 10:30 in the morning, she would walk the 7 blocks to the public library. She would return the 2 books she had borrowed the previous week and select 2 new ones. She would then sit in her usual chair by the window, read for exactly 45 minutes and walk home. She was 72 years old and her life was a comfortable map of small, familiar habits. This Tuesday, however, was different. The library was closed. A small handwritten sign on the heavy oak door read, "Closed for urgent maintenance. We apologise for the inconvenience." Agnes felt a small, sharp twist of annoyance in her chest. Her routine was broken. She stood on the pavement for a moment, unsure. The sky was a flat grey colour, and a cold wind pushed loose leaves along the street. She decided to walk to the large shopping centre on the edge of town. It was not her favourite place. It was too bright, too noisy, and full of things she did not need. But it had a large bookshop, and she could at least browse the shelves. The shopping centre was busy. People hurried past with plastic bags and cups of coffee. The air smelled of fried food and perfume. Agnes found the bookshop and spent a pleasant 20 minutes looking at new novels. The prices, however, were shocking. She put a thin volume back on the shelf and decided to leave. As she walked toward the exit, she passed a small, dusty shop squeezed between a phone repair store and a discount shoe shop. It had no name above the door, only a faded sign that said Antiques and Curiosities. In the window, among old lamps and cracked ceramic figures, sat a telephone. It was a dial telephone, the kind she had not seen since she was a young woman. It was heavy, black and shiny, with a coiled metal cord and a rotary dial with holes for your fingers. Agnes stopped. A memory, sudden and clear, filled her mind. Her grandmother's house. The smell of lavender, the same black telephone on a small table in the hall. She had used it once as a child to call her mother. She had turned the dial with her small fingers, listening to the clicking sound as it returned to its place. Without thinking, she pushed open the shop door. A small bell rang. The shop was dark and crowded with furniture. An old man with thick glasses sat behind a counter reading a newspaper. He did not look up. Agnes walked to the telephone. It was even more beautiful close up. The metal was cold and smooth. The dial was clean and white with numbers from 0 to 9. She touched the receiver. It felt solid and real. "How much?" she asked. The old man looked over his glasses. "That old thing, it doesn't work. No wires, no connection. Just a piece of history." "I don't care," Agnes said. "How much?" He named a very small price. Agnes paid it without hesitation. She carried the telephone home in a plastic bag, holding it carefully, as if it were made of glass. That evening she placed it on her small dining table. She sat down and looked at it. It was complete. Every number was on the dial. The receiver was in its cradle. The cord ended in a bare wire, cut cleanly. It could never connect to anything. It was useless. And yet Agnes felt a strange desire. She wanted to dial a number. She wanted to hear that old familiar click, click, click as the dial turned back. She picked up the receiver. It was silent, of course. No dial tone, no hum, nothing. She looked at the dial. Her eyes moved over the numbers. She thought of her grandmother. She thought of her mother, who had died 10 years ago. She thought of her sister, Ellen, who had moved to Australia and never wrote. She thought of her husband, Frank, who had passed away 5 years ago. All the people she had loved were gone or far away. She put her finger in the hole for number 8. She turned the dial to the stop and let it go. Click, 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 click. The sound was perfect. It was the sound of her childhood. She did it again with the number 4, then 2, then 9. She was dialing a number from memory, a number she had not used in over 50 years. It was her grandmother's old number. She finished dialing 8429. She waited. Nothing. Of course, nothing. The wire was cut. There was no network, no exchange, no one on the other end. But then she heard something. It was very faint, a whisper. No, not a whisper, a breath, a soft human breath, as if someone was listening. Agnes froze, her heart beat faster. She put the receiver closer to her ear. "Hello?" she said, her voice trembling. Silence. Then a voice. It was thin and distant, like a radio station from another country, but it was clear. It was a woman's voice. "Agnes, is that you?" Agnes dropped the receiver. It clattered on the table. She stared at it. Her hands were shaking. She picked it up again, slowly. "Who is this?" she asked. "It's your grandmother," said the voice. "I've been waiting for you to call. I knew you would find the number." Agnes could not speak. Her throat was tight. Tears filled her eyes. "But you're gone. You died. I was at your funeral." "I know, dear," said the voice, and it sounded kind and warm. "But the number still works. It always works. It is the last number on the dial for people who remember. You remembered." Agnes sat down heavily in her chair. "I miss you," she whispered. "I miss everyone." "I know," said her grandmother, "but you have your own life, your own number. And one day, when you are ready, someone will dial it and find you. That is how it works. The line is never truly cut." There was a pause, then the voice grew fainter. "I have to go now, Agnes. The connection is weak, but remember, the last number is always for love." And then the line went dead. Not just silent, but dead. No breath, no hum, nothing but the empty, heavy quiet of the room. Agnes held the receiver for a long time. She looked at the dial. She saw the numbers 0 to 9, but now she understood. The last number was not a digit. It was the act of dialing itself. It was the reaching out. It was the hope. She put the receiver back in its cradle. She wiped her eyes. She stood up, walked to her small kitchen, and made a cup of tea. She sat by her window and watched the evening turn to night. She felt a strange peace, as if a door had been opened and then gently closed. The next morning, she took the telephone to the charity shop on her street. She gave it to the woman at the counter. "For someone else," she said simply. She walked home. Her routine was her own again, but it felt different. It felt lighter. She understood that the people she loved were not gone. They were just at the other end of a number she no longer needed to dial. She had made the call, she had heard the answer, and that was enough. That evening she picked up her own modern phone and called her sister in Australia. It was early morning there. Ellen answered, sleepy and surprised. They talked for an hour. They laughed, they cried, they promised to write more often. Agnes went to bed that night with a quiet smile. She had found the last number on the dial, and she had used it. The line was not cut. It had never been. She closed her eyes and slept deeply, without dreams. The telephone in the charity shop sat on a shelf, waiting. Its dial was complete. Its receiver was silent. But somewhere in a city or a village, a lonely person would walk past, stop and remember, and they would reach out, and the last number would ring again. But for Agnes, the story was finished. She had made her peace. If you learned a new word today, please make sure to subscribe so you can practice again next time. Vocabulary notes. Routine, noun. Meaning, a fixed regular way of doing things, a set of actions that you repeat regularly. Example, Agnes Cole knew the value of a good routine. Another example, her routine was broken. Explanation. Agnes feels safe because she does the same things at the same times. When her library visit is interrupted, she feels uncomfortable. This word is very common for describing daily habits, both good and boring. Similar words: habit, schedule, pattern, custom, practice. Connection, noun, meaning a relationship or link between two things, people or places. It can be physical, like a wire, or emotional, like a feeling between people. Example: no wires, no connection, physical. Another example: the connection is weak, the telephone line. Explanation: in the story, the word is used both for the telephone wire and for the emotional link Agnes feels with her grandmother. The story suggests that emotional connections are stronger than physical ones. Similar words: link, bond, tie, attachment, relationship. Faint, adjective, meaning very weak, quiet or not clear. It is difficult to see, hear or smell. Example: she heard something. It was very faint, a whisper. Another example: then the voice grew fainter. Explanation: the grandmother's voice is not loud or strong. It sounds like it is coming from a long distance away. This word is often used for sounds, colors, smells, or memories that are not strong. Similar words: weak, soft, dim, distant, vague. Cradle, noun, meaning the part of a telephone where the receiver rests when it is not being used. It is also the word for a baby's small bed. Example: the receiver was in its cradle. Another example: she put the receiver back in its cradle. Explanation: this is a useful technical word for older phones. In the story, the cradle is a resting place. When Agnes puts the receiver back, she is ending the call and returning to her normal life. The word gives a gentle, safe feeling. Similar words: rest, holder, support, base, stand. Peace, noun, meaning a feeling of calm, quiet and freedom from worry or conflict. It is the opposite of noise, stress or sadness. Example: she felt a strange peace, as if a door had been opened and then gently closed. Another example: she had made her peace. Explanation: Agnes does not feel happy or excited. She feels calm and accepts the past. To make peace with something means to accept a difficult situation and stop fighting against it emotionally. This is a very important word for describing emotional resolution. Similar words: calm, tranquility, serenity, stillness, contentment. Story written by DeepSeek. Image created by onemin.ai. To read, listen, see all the story's content in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. CC Music, drifting at 432 Hz, Unicorn Heads.